Hey there, I'm Chris Lee. I am an AFOL, or an adult fan of LEGO. I've been collecting LEGO since I was 7 years old, and I own well over 1,000,000 LEGO bricks. I mostly collect LEGO sets, as you can see displayed, like the Star Wars ships hanging from the ceiling or buildings displayed in the cupboards, but from time to time I also love to create my own creations or mocks, and I also love to dabble in stop action photography videos and do a lot of VFX video editing with stuff like After Effects and whatnot to incorporate with LEGO. And I really didn't have a dark ages, which is the LEGO fan community term for a period where you kind of grow out of LEGO, usually in your teenage or college age. I never have had that, and I don't expect it to happen, so really ever since then, been a long road. I use actually a tracking service called Brickset.com. It's a really great way to track your collection, but the main problem with it is that it only tracks my completed sets. And if you notice behind me, I've got this whole cupboard just packed to the brim of loose LEGO parts, which are mostly gifts from my friends who outgrew their LEGO. So I'd say that what's tracked in Brickset is really not amassing I'd say even half of my collection, maybe about half, but it's really hard to tell for me personally, unfortunately. It's quite a large number. I mean, you can obviously see what you see behind me is only really a section of it. If I were to turn the camera around, there's a whole nother area right in front of me and off to the side as well, not to mention hundreds of minifigures up on frames along my wall upstairs, so it's quite a lot. If I had to put a number on the exact number of pieces, according to Brickset.com, it's around 1,300,000, so quite a lot, but again, that only counts the completed sets that I've logged in the collection. It doesn't count the bins and drawers of loose parts, so I'd say it's maybe double of that. I'm not really sure, but somewhere around that number just in terms of the sets. So in terms of what I have logged, completed sets, I own 5,443 at the time of this recording. I know that number is going to go up probably today or tomorrow, but as of this recording, it's over 5,000. So the thing that I love most about LEGO is just the sheer amount of possibilities of what you can do with the bricks. Within LEGO, there's a lot of different subsystems within systems. For example, you have the classic LEGO set, which is your system, as they call it, building blocks, which obviously you can see here. You can use it to build all manner of things from castles to buildings to spaceships, but there's a subsystem called CCBS, that is the character and creature building system, and that's what LEGO uses to create their action figure lines, the most famous of which is, of course, Bionicle, which you can see on the shelf directly behind me. And I think that I really love to not only blend these two systems together, but build individually in them, because they're just so different, but every brick and every CCBS part really works in their own system and works with each other as well. So I just love the endless possibilities that come from building with LEGO. If I'm in the mood to build an action figure, I will use that system. If I'm in the mood to build a realistic car, I'll probably use LEGO Technic to build a really great car like that. And if I'm just in the mood to build a building or a spaceship for LEGO minifigures to inhabit, then I'll just use these standard system bricks. So my first LEGO set, this is actually a little bit of a twofold question for me. I chased around a remote-controlled LEGO set. It's called a Spybotics set. It was kind of their precursor to LEGO Mindstorms in terms of robotics. Looks absolutely nothing like LEGO. Unless you're a die-hard LEGO fan, you might not even recognize it as LEGO, but I have a distinct memory of chasing it around the LEGO store. I must have been around 2 to 3 years old since that set came out in 2002. And so I believe that technically that was my first LEGO set, because my parents got it for me after I was chasing it. But I did not know it was LEGO. I didn't really understand what LEGO was until my cousin gifted me with, I actually have the set right here. It is the Solar Explorer. This is a set from the Life on Mars theme, and from an AFOL perspective today, it's not really that great of a set, to be honest. It uses this kind of foil piece to make up most of the body, which is kind of frowned upon in terms of LEGO building today. But what I love most about the set was the different configurations that you could put it in. So for example, I can take off the back engine here and slap it on the front, and you kind of have a whole new spaceship. And this was one of the things that really got me into LEGO, was the modularity of even just within a set, a single set, there's just so many possibilities of what you can do with the bricks. And I must have rebuilt this dozens of times when I was a kid, just because I love this set so much. I would say that I am a very creative person. A lot of my other hobbies span from just being creative. For example, I'm working on a medical device startup right now, and a lot of my thinking in designing that product actually kind of revolves around my roots in Lego and thinking about how different parts would fit together. It's specifically a restrictive drug dispenser, so it really restricts when people are taking addictive medication. That's a whole other story. But when I'm designing and 3D printing that design, it really kind of helps me to think within the Lego mindset and draw from my creativity with Lego in order to make that. And even with all my other hobbies, all kind of have their roots in Lego, like movie making I mentioned, and doing stuff in After Effects with VFX and whatnot. I started off with movie making by making stop action movies for Lego, so I think I have Lego to thank for a lot of my hobbies and interests today. I am sorting the tons and tons of pieces. It has been years and I am very much looking forward to sort it. I am using a guide that most AFOLs use online. It is a part sorting list that you can essentially go down the categories, and I sort them into categories first and then sort them into subcategories and then finally sort them by part. So it is a grueling process, but what I've discovered over that time is that I own a lot of the bricks to build many of the sets that I don't own. For example, I took some side tangents off to build some of the older discontinued sets that I realized I kind of had basically enough parts with some color substitutions to build what is essentially an exact replica of that set without having to spend a ton of money trying to find it on the aftermarket. I would say a day in the life of someone who owns well over 1 million Lego bricks would be, let's say if I theoretically had the entire day to focus on Lego, which unfortunately these days I don't, but the ideal day for me would be to come down, sort some Lego. I would find, let's say, an interesting piece or a sticker and say, I know what set that goes to. Let me see if I can find the rest of the pieces to build that. And what ensues is a mad scavenger hunt, looking all over my bins and whatnot, trying to put together this one set that I didn't own before, but I know that I could have the parts to build now. So after I do some building down here, I'd probably go upstairs, edit some videos because we record well in advance, and to scratch kind of that video editing itch. And once I do that, I'd probably build some official sets because I do love building the sets. Obviously what I have displayed are the official Lego sets, so I usually have some sort of backlog of 1 or 2 sets that I always have unbuilt, so to crack open on a day where I don't have too much else to do and I get to kind of sit back and enjoy them. So I have had a dedicated Lego room pretty much since I started collecting, and this all stemmed from my cousin who outgrew Lego, and he basically gave his entire collection to me, which was really massive, and he brought it all over to the house, and I was figuring, okay, we need some place to store this, and it started off with just one shelf on the side of the wall of this basement, and the rest was actually an exercise in a movie room. And slowly it's just kind of overtaken this area. We've moved the exercise stuff to another room, and I've built in some secret passageways and secret doors that are app controlled from my phone to hold some of the rarer stuff in my collection, and also to access what is my green screen studio for filming. So I guess over the years it's kind of evolved into this, and I really started hanging stuff just a few years ago when I just simply ran out of shelf space to contain all the spaceships. But really, I started taking over the room, I'd say, at 7 years old when I got my cousin's collection, and with it, the Solar Explorer set. In terms of what's the most prized possession that I have in terms of Lego that I keep there, I think value is a little bit different for me than personal nostalgia and remembrance. In terms of value, it would probably be one of the Comic-Con exclusives, which I don't collect too many. But of the ones I do collect, Lego, for those of you who don't know, Lego puts out Comic-Con exclusives every year. Obviously not this year because they didn't have it, it was virtual, but every year other than this year, they really have had one for many years, and it's usually a special minifig. In some years it was a Bionicle mask, so those are some of the rarer ones that I have there, because obviously I'm a fan of Bionicles, so I made sure to collect at least all the Bionicle exclusives, and those are safely stored in there. But in terms of a prized possession that's more nostalgic to me, it'd probably just be my first Lego set. So that is a really tricky one for me. I think it's really just hard to quantify, especially because you know how time flies when you're doing something fun, and I think that adage is really well spent here. I can often just come into my Lego room and not realize that hours have passed when I'm just looking for stuff or building things. So I'd say personally it's really hard to quantify, and I think that number really does vary. The reason for this is because, of course, I have school commitments, I have my startup and whatnot, so a lot of time I do have to spend just working on other stuff, but anytime I can, if I have free time, I would come down here. So I really honestly have to say it's almost impossible to put a number on that. I would say, yeah, I think it would be just really difficult to put a number, unfortunately. If I had to think of a Lego set that I wanted to own but I don't, to be honest, I think that I have most of these sets that I really want. I've been lucky enough to have obviously gifts from friends, but also a lot of side businesses to raise revenue on the side to help fund the collection. And essentially what I've done is every time I get a ton of money in, let's say, I would use that to kind of go down my list of stuff that I want and buy out all the sets that are discontinued that I can't just get easily at the Lego store. And I've kind of done that to the extent where most of the discontinued stuff that I didn't own, I do own now that I really wanted. However, if I did have to say one, it is actually not even that particularly of a rare set. It's not too difficult to find if you're willing to spend enough for it. It is a set called the Guarded Inn. It was a very small Lego castle set, and usually what Lego Castle does is they make castles and buildings and siege engines. So this was something that was really different. It was just an inn for soldiers to sleep in, and it came with a ton of exclusive parts. So that means I can't build it from my own collection. And what's really annoying is that it's quite small. It's a very small, compact building. If they were to sell it these days, it'd probably be around $20, but it's over 10 times that on the aftermarket, and I just can't bring myself to spend that much money on such a small package. So maybe one day if I had enough disposable income where I'd say, okay, maybe I'll just get that set, but it's not that high of a priority, and I just don't see myself spending as much money as on such something so small. If I had to think of any themes that I would want Lego to branch out into, to be honest, Lego has done a really great job of obtaining super obscure licenses. They released a sub-theme a few years back called Lego Dimensions, and within that, they basically got almost every single license you could think of. They have Lego like Mission Impossible, James Bond, a ton of 80s properties, Goonies, E.T., whatnot. So pretty much every pop culture thing that is out there that's popular and is age appropriate, Lego has some hand in creating licensed products for. That being said, if I had to pick one, I would actually go for something that Lego has tried in the past, but maybe not done as well of a job as I would hope. Specifically, I would say the Avatar: The Last Airbender sets. The show is kind of becoming a cultural phenomenon again in 2020. And what Lego did back in the day is that they weren't going through a great financial period. They were kind of rushing out sets and making them not really as good as they could be. And they only put out 2 Avatar sets, and they were both not quite up to par with today's building standards, and I really hope that one of these days Lego has a chance to revisit the line. I'm sure with today's building techniques they could really make it great again. And the other theme I would say is Lord of the Rings, which only got 1 year worth of Lego sets, which was really not at all, it really needed a lot more time than that, and we're still missing a ton of locations and buildings and whatnot and characters. And I'd love to see Lord of the Rings kind of get the same treatment that Lego did to Harry Potter, which is discontinuing it in 2011 and then bringing it back in 2018 with a whole new style, with completely advanced building techniques and so on. So I'd love to see some kind of revitalization for any of the 2 properties that they've tried in the past. Hopefully with the new live-action Avatar show and the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, maybe there's some opportunity to capitalize on that in the future. That would be very sad. I think that one of the things that I really take pleasure from in my life and a way that I used to de-stress is my Lego collection and playing around with it, especially because I'm in a relatively rigorous academic program. I have a ton of startups on the side and whatnot. Life can get quite stressful, and I really love using Lego as a way to kind of relax and wind down. And the other thing that I really love about Lego is the community that comes with it and making friends along the line. For example, one of my closest friends that I've made at Penn, I met him because I saw over the corner of my shoulder, I saw him browsing a very niche and very popular Lego community fan site. And I knew I had to introduce myself and kind of say, hey, I don't know if what the context was of you looking at that page, but I don't know if you're into Lego, I'm really into it as well. And we really kind of hit it off, and he's the guy I'm making a YouTube channel with together to showcase this. So I think that Lego encompasses not just a relaxation for myself, but also is a big part of how I socialize with some of my friends in particular, is bonding with them over Lego and discussing it. Lego is definitely a way for people to keep sane and kind of escape from the stress of life, and really brings you back to kind of how it felt to be as a kid again, opening up a new present. Obviously, I don't do as much playing now as I do displaying versus making movies, but the feeling of building is still the same. And I think the building experience is just so relaxing and cathartic for me to do on days, especially if I'm tired or stressed, then I'll just sit down and build a Lego set and it's all good. So that one, I think, again, is a very tricky question to answer. In terms of the amount of money I've spent on Lego, it's quite difficult for me to quantify, especially because I think at least a good third of what I get in, say, a year is just gifts from friends and family. What's really nice is I have very supportive family members, very supportive friends, and all my friends know that on my birthdays and stuff, it's just, I want Lego. If they give me a Lego set, there's a good chance that I have it already, but then I'll just return it and buy another Lego set with that money. So it's really not a big deal for them to buy gifts. I'm very easy to buy gifts for. So I'd say a lot of my collection is actually a lot of gifts from friends and family. But in terms of how much I spend myself, it's quite hard to tell because there's also a bit of an in and out. I operate a store on bricklink.com, which is actually officially acquired by Lego now. It's the largest secondhand Lego marketplace that exists. And what I do is that oftentimes, if I come across a duplicate minifigure in my collection, or a duplicate set, or maybe a set that I just no longer need in my collection, then I will put it up for sale there, and I will use that money to buy more Lego. So it's kind of almost a constant in and out exchange in terms of that. So I would say it's quite difficult to put a number on it. And I know that there is a site that I use to track that does put a retail value estimate. But that being said, for example, if a set came out for $10 10 years ago, maybe I would have paid somewhere closer to $50 to even $80 to $100, depending on how rare that one set is. So going off of retail value is not very accurate, I would say, in terms of how much I spent. So I have been to Billund, Denmark twice now. I have not actually visited the factory per se, but I have visited the Lego house, which is the kind of community hub for Lego. They have a Lego museum down there. I will say that there's probably more sets here than there were in their Lego museum, but it was a very, very interesting museum nonetheless, and it was a really great experience because being able to travel to Billund, Denmark allowed me to visit the original home of the founder of Lego, Ole Kirk Christiansen, and kind of just being able to walk up to his original house and look through the windows and see his own furniture and whatnot, and kind of see just the roots of Lego and where they started, going all the way up to today, is something that's really fascinating to me and something that was a really kind of magical experience to do. And to date, I've been to every Legoland in the world. I believe that there is one opening in New York and another one in China in the next year or two. So hopefully at some point in my life, I'll be able to go to those ones. Obviously the New York one will be a lot easier for me. I already have a trip planned with my friend when it opens. Ideally, we'd be back in college by then, so it'd be a quick trip. But as of today, I have been to all the Legolands. So in terms of what the Lego community experience means to me, I think that the Lego community is something really special. Obviously, if you're talking to other AFOLs or adult fans, there's always some sort of understanding that you're all kind of discussing a children's toy. It's not something that people get really heated over, or there's no really major negative aspect to the community, because at the end of the day, it's all just adults talking about a children's toy and enjoying the joy that it brings them to kind of go back to how they were as children and enjoy the hobbies. So the really great thing about the Lego community is I just love being able to converse with people from all around the world. I think the most emblematic thing is that the most popular Lego community discussion website is called Eurobricks.com, and it started off as a European site, but it really has branched out to just encompass all Lego fans around the world. And just being able to interact with strangers and discuss new Lego sets and whatnot is one of the most interesting experiences that I've had. And it's really great to talk to someone about your hobby, about your interests, and going even beyond that. As I mentioned before, I was able to make a really great friend by just discovering that he had a shared passion for Lego as I did, which I never would have expected to just happen across in the real world. So I've been very lucky to be able to get that, and I think that that's what's really great about the community to me, is that everyone kind of uplifts each other. There's a lot of positive discussion on what new products Lego would bring out, and even if a set isn't to someone's liking, there's always someone out there who puts out a step-by-step guide to just make it even better and just to improve an existing set, which a lot of people take a lot of joy from. So in terms of the ways that LEGO has really made a difference in people's lives, I would say that the examples of that are countless. And the reason for this, I think, while I can't come up with a very specific example off the top of my head, is that LEGO as a company is just really great at interacting with their customers and providing the best possible customer service imaginable. I think that what LEGO does is they really try to connect with their market. They really try to connect to the people that enjoy their products, and having the company kind of be really supportive from a corporation standpoint, being supportive in what you're doing and helping you through stuff is one of the best things about LEGO, I think. And in terms of me personally, obviously I mentioned before, LEGO is a great tool to de-stress after a long day. I'm sure for a lot of other people, it's even more meaningful than that. And LEGO is just a way that kind of connects people from all sorts of different backgrounds and completely diverse identities and their own life experiences, and it all gives us kind of something to bond over.
And finally, to continue on with this point, I think one of my favorite things about LEGO is being able to share it with other people. I was very lucky enough to be able to travel to the Kangemi slums of Nairobi, Kenya for several years and bring not only some computer lessons and tech skills to children living in the slums, but also bring LEGO over. And LEGO was one of the ways that I was able to bond with people that I was teaching computer lessons to and really kind of get on the same level as these kids and kind of share an enjoyment for the toy. And I brought over a ton of my bricks. We had some really fun race car competitions, kind of like the ones that you find in Legoland. There was the classic bridge building and weight holding competitions. So all sorts of things that I feel can be done with LEGO, even educationally, to get kids' minds working and hopefully to inspire them to create new things and to think creatively in their own lives.
Yeah, I would say that I'm personally very lucky enough to have LEGO have affected my life in a very positive way. Of course, as I mentioned before, one of my closest friends today I met because I saw him on a LEGO site and just tried to reach out to him and say, hey, I'm a LEGO fan too, and that's really where we hit it off. But even beyond that, even if my friends are not interested in LEGO, I think a lot of my friends make it a point to kind of talk to me about it, and if I have a LEGO set on display when they're coming over to visit, they always take time to look at it and ask me questions, and it's really great that I have kind of a supportive network of friends that are really interested in what I'm doing in terms of LEGO. Obviously, it's probably not something that they're used to seeing at all from time to time, so it's always fun for them to come over and look at my LEGO collection from an outsider's point of view, and they're always very supportive. And of course, my family, I mean, I don't think if my family wasn't supportive, then I wouldn't be standing here right now, and this room would still be their exercise room. So, of course, I have my family to thank for being very, very supportive of the hobby and continually just being happy with what I'm doing and finding ways to bring joy to my life. I'd say if you ever played with LEGO as a kid and enjoyed it in any capacity, you should try building a new set today. What's really cool about LEGO is that just this year they launched a line of sets called 18 plus adult builders sets. So they are specifically focusing on adult builders who are rediscovering LEGO. So now is literally the perfect time to get back into LEGO. If you remotely liked it as a kid, try out one of those 18 plus sets. The building techniques and the level of detail and complexity will just blow your mind. And I would highly recommend for anyone to do that. I think I've got one. This is a very nostalgic one for me. Obviously, I think I mentioned previously that, in terms of what's most nostalgic or favorite memory relating to LEGO, as I mentioned previously, the LEGO sets often get discontinued after 1 to 2 years. So if you are kind of on the cusp or completely miss that, you really have to just go to the aftermarket and try to find it yourself. And I just remember a really strong memory in my mind. I must have been around 11 or 12 years old. We were on vacation in Austria and we were exploring almost complete wilderness. We were exploring some ice caves up on the top of some mountainside, and we go down and there's this very tiny village, and we just took a stop for a lunch break. And so while I'm eating lunch at this tiny village, there can't have been more than 5 or 6 buildings. Out of the corner of my eye, I just see a shop display with a LEGO set that was at least 6 or 7 years old. And I just completely lost my mind. I went into the set and it was complete LEGO builder's paradise. they had all these sets that were discontinued for so long and had so many years ago, because I can imagine no one's passing through that town, and I can't imagine anyone buying up Lego in that very small village. I was shocked to see it even there, and it's one of the best memories of my life. I obviously have my parents to thank for helping me lug it back to, I believe it was our cruise ship, so we didn't even have a lot of luggage to put it in, but they carried it all the way back. It was, if anyone remembers the Exo 4 series, it was a ton of Exo 4 sets like the Mobile Devastator. They had Viking sets. They had a set from 1998 from the Lego Trains theme. All sorts of really just rare pieces, and they were selling for retail. It wasn't like it was a Lego specific shop that was increasing the prices because they know the value. They were selling it at retail price, and in many cases they were discounted significantly. So that was almost like finding a treasure trove of just undiscovered stuff. Very rare, very valuable, and I just remember very distinctly where I was in that exact moment when I found those. I'd say that's a big part of it. I'd say just being able to go out hunting for discontinued Lego, especially in areas of the world, because I'm a world traveler. I love just traveling all around the world, and I go to these places that are kind of obscure and not very populated, and I think those are the places where you can really find some rare finds and some rare gems, and that's part of what is really fun to me in the hobby. It's kind of the I'd say the thrill of the chase, and sure, I could just save up and buy the set off of bricklink.com and have it shipped to my house in a few days, but the fun of it is really just going out there, not knowing what to expect, and just seeing what I find, and I think that's a big part of the Lego hobby for me. I would love to work at Lego. That being said, I don't think that they have many internship programs, and I just completed an internship over the past summer to kind of build up experience, and I would love to go into Lego, maybe not as a set designer because there is a ton of more talented people out there that are far better than me at building creations, but even just from a business standpoint, because a lot of the stuff that I do and talk about with my friends are the business decisions that Lego makes, and how if they even just tweaked some slight things here and there, they could just increase their profits significantly or reach a completely new audience. And I think that I would love to be able to share kind of the insight that I've had collecting for so many years. If anyone out there at Lego is listening, I would love to talk, and that's part of the reason why I am making my YouTube channel, DuckBricks, is to, as I mentioned before, hopefully be able to apply and be accepted to the Lego Ambassador Network, because that is one more step towards Lego. It's a direct connection to them, and having someone on the inside that you can talk to and kind of introduce yourself to, I think will do wonders in terms of being able to get some sort of job at Lego. So I would love to. I think that would be absolutely amazing and a dream come true. So in terms of sets that I am most proud of, or the most prized possession in my collection, I think that I have to boil it down to just two. And for one, this piece right here is a custom model designed by me. It is a map of the island of Matanui. Any Lego Bionicle fan will recognize this as the main island where a lot of the conflict took place in the so-called golden years of 2001 to 2003. And this is a very iconic design to me. It took me a lot of time to design this and just get the colors right. And a little Easter egg for fans of Bionicle and maybe Ninjago is that I've included a sticker of the map of Matanui that is seen in the Lego Ninjago City dock set, because a Lego designer who was also a fan of Bionicle managed to sneak that into a Ninjago set. So I kind of have a little blend here with the best of both worlds. But custom creations, I would say this is my favorite. But in terms of official Lego sets, and excuse the string because I have this hanging from the ceiling, is that this is the Galaxy Explorer, and this is the most classic Lego space set that you can ever think of. It is one of the first spaceships they ever made, and this is really the epitome of why I love Lego and why I think that Lego has a really strong staying power today. Because if you look at it from the front, of course it has a very aerodynamic design. It's a good swooshable spaceship, but there's so much more that meets the eye with this one. And specifically, if you open up the back, you can see that a little ramp descends and you can get a little rover out, which is something completely unique. And Lego didn't really do stuff like this. This came out in the I believe 78 or 79. And at that time, Lego didn't really have that many parts at their disposal. So the fact that they were able to build in such a unique feature that would probably be seen on a set that came out around today is something that's really impressive to me and shows that LEGO designers really knew what they were doing even from the start. Of course, we've got an opening canopy here, and just the color scheme and everything has inspired me to build so many different things under this LEGO Classic Space line, and this is probably why this is one of my favorite LEGO sets that I have.